All right, I think we're live. I'm gonna bounce around for a few seconds,
Whoa,
and all right, that's plenty of time for things to go live. So, all right, hello, Internet. I'm gonna play with things while I do my introduction really quickly. But all right, it's just me right now. I'm working with a new setup here, and I've got all sorts of fun options I can use. But anyway, hello to everyone watching on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch, and from the future, if you're watching the archives. I'm HP Holo, and this is Authors Just Talk About. And today we are going to be talking about parenting, or rather, my panelists are going to be talking about parenting, and I'm just going to be saying things and moderating because the closest I am to, or the closest I've come to having a kid is maybe my class that I taught when I was teaching 8th grade, and decided that was all I needed. So, our panel lineup is a little different right now. Casey Ezel cannot join us because she is off doing fun things with helicopters or planes. Either way, it's in the air. And then Cedar Sanderson she is in the process of moving and couldn't get her set up to work from her hotel. So for now, it is just me and my two panelists. So if you guys want to go down the line, let's see. Les, we'll have you introduce yourself first and tell us who you are and what you've written and if you've got any new stuff coming out.
All right. Hi, I'm Les Johnson. I am a parent of many years now. I've got kids that are in their mid-20s. I'm a physicist and an author. My latest book came out last year and the year before, actually, in two different versions from Baen. It's a collection of science fiction, short stories, and original popular nonfiction essays about what will happen to the human species as we go to the stars. It's published by Baen. And this is a big year for me. I've got two books coming out this summer. One, first book of a trilogy with Travis Taylor. It's called Saving Proxima. It's an interstellar voyage, first time that I've undertaken something on kind of that grand scale. And I'm wetting my feet into the world of space opera this October with a book called The Space-Time War, which will be coming out also from Baen.
What was the first one called again? Your sound went funny whenever you said it.
Oh, the one that's coming out this summer is called Saving Proxima. And that's with my friend and co-author, Travis Taylor. It's the first book in a trilogy. So we're on our way to Proxima Centauri.
Nice. All right, Lydia, how about you?
Hello, all. I am Lydia Sherrer, and I am mostly an urban fantasy author. I have a book series called Love Lies and Hocus Pocus, The Adventures of Lily Singer, I'm on book 7 with a couple peripheral standalone books. I have 2 small children, so I'm definitely in that parenting lose your mind stage. So if I stumble over words, it's because having kids makes you lose your mind. Anyway, I hopefully once I get to be Les Johnson's age, I will have found it back and regained my mind. I don't know, Les. Have you found your mind again?
You do survive parenting.
You do survive, yes. That's good.
You do get through it.
So let's hear. I've got my urban fantasy series, and then I've also started co-authoring a lit RPG / science fiction adventure series with John Ringo. Called the Transdimensional Hunters trilogy. The first one is Into the Real, and that comes out next spring, and I'm super excited about it. And that's been a lot of fun to do.
That's the one that you posted the sample chapter of, right? A few weeks ago or a few days ago? Yeah, that thing is awesome. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Nice. Yeah, all right, well, we are going to get to our questions because I know Les has to leave a little bit early for us. So first question, simple one. How many kids do you have and how old are they? We'll do Les first.
Yeah, well, I have 2. I have a matched set, a boy and a girl. My daughter is 25 and my son is 27. And thanks to COVID, they're both home. They both didn't anticipate being home this past year, but circumstances with everything that happened brought them back. And it's been kind of nice to have them back underfoot.
Nice. And Lydia,
I have a 2.5-year-old and a 10-month-old. So they're both boys. And so we are right in the thick of it, right in the thick of the kiddo stage. And they're adorable and fun and a headache and the greatest blessing that I could have ever received. And I love them to death. So
we've got kids on both ends of the spectrum here. Nice. All right. So I guess the second question I want to ask, is how do you balance your writing time with your family time? And Lydia, how about you first for this one? I bet it's more of a challenge for you since you have the little babies.
Yes. So when you say balance, it's not really a balance. It's just carving out time as you can. So things are a little bit different now because I've gone through quite a transition since I started having kids. I started publishing about 5 years ago. My oldest is 2.5 years. So I was publishing about 2.5 years before I had a kid. And so I went from spending pretty much all day, every day, working on either writing or marketing to spending most of the day taking care of an infant and, working when they napped, or maybe if they were like playing on the floor, for like 10 or 15 minutes at a time, or maybe I could get my mom to come over and babysit for a couple hours, like a couple days a week. I live in the same city as my parents. So it was really hard at first, more frustration than anything else, because I truly adore what I do. I love writing. It's my passion every day. And I love my kids too, but it's really hard to like give up one for the other instead of doing both, like all of it. So that was hard, balancing that, feeling guilty about not spending the entire day with my kids / feeling guilty not working all day, darned if you do, darned if you don't. But then as, a couple years passed, I had my second, publishing has been going very well. And I've been able to hire babysitters to babysit like during the day and give me uninterrupted time while providing, a really great person to play with the kids and help them, learn and explore the world. And at this point, my husband recently, 3-4 months ago, quit his job to work and do marketing for my books. So now that we're both fully self-employed, we've hired a nanny because, of course, we can't get any work done if we don't have someone watch the kids, which is the same as any other working parent. They have their kids in daycare. So we have our kids in daycare just at our house with a nanny. So now it's more a matter of being disciplined and staying down in the basement and getting work done instead of going upstairs to take a break and play with the kids. So,
Nice. Les, how about you? How did you write
or
balance writing time with family time?
Well, I started writing in about 2006. My first book was published in 2007. And my kids were like early teens at that time, 11 and 13. And the balancing of time for me is tough because I have a pretty demanding day job. In my day job, I work for NASA. And I've got a flight project I'm working on right now. And I did then as well. And there's a lot of travel involved in that. And that ended up actually being the blessing because I'm not much one to go to dinner and hang out and then go to the bar with people when I'm traveling, So what we would do is at the business trips, when the day is done, I would have a short dinner and I'd go write. I'd go back up to the hotel room and write. When I'm on an airplane flying to Colorado, or I live in Alabama, so to fly to California, to JPL or otherwise for a meeting is an all-day affair. Mostly sitting on a plane or in an airport, out comes the laptop, So I did a lot of writing in the air, in hotel rooms, trying to keep the family life balance. And Lydia, I feel for you. It's hard to do that. And it's really difficult when you're trying to write part-time and work full-time. And fortunately, I was able to balance it I think, fairly well. My kids haven't complained anyway, but it's hard. And I'm fortunate I didn't start when they were really little. I don't think I would have been able to because it's much more time intense management when they're that young. When they're in school, sometimes you can take a day off and the school's got them all day, right? So you're home. I know in this past year with a lot of kids at home, it's been tough for people to find time to do any job from home, trying to keep their kids educated and doing the remote work and all that kind of thing. But the work life, the writing life balance is tough. And I think I actually have a harder time finding time to write today than I did then because work's gotten that much more intense for me. And it's not family that's competing. It's the job.
Nice. All right. Next question. What is the best thing about raising kids and also the toughest thing about raising kids? And anyone can go first on this one. Who wants to volunteer?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, the best thing is every day. I mean, I just look back on it and the best advice, or not advice, I guess is kind of one of those wisdom truism things that people who are in my stage and have their kids who are grown tell people like Lydia, who's in the middle of it. is, the thing about parenting, and this is really true, the days are long, but the years are short. And I remember some days where I would just be exhausted, but I look back on those days now and they were fleeting. They really were. And they were just awesome. And I can tell you that a lot of people tell you that, the teen years, oh, you're dreading the teen years. No. We didn't have a rough time with my kids as teenagers. So I think the best thing about parenting was just the experience of watching them grow, become independent, thinking little creatures, launching into the world. The worst thing is I have no memory of my 30s and early 40s. I'm serious. Those years, I look in a photo album and I feel like I'm looking at a movie. I look at the pictures and I see pictures of me doing things, even some things with the family. And it just is so intense that the worst thing of it is I don't remember a lot of the details. It's just this big amorphous blur.
Wow.
How about you, Lydia?
Let's see here. Well, the best part is my kids. They are little bitty, precious, smart, adorable human beings with eternal souls that somehow I made. Like, biology, but like it was us, me and my husband got together and now there are more people in the world. And it's humbling and it's a miracle. Like, it's just a humbling, beautiful thing. And they love me, like they want me. And it's like, wow, okay, this is good. Also, kind of stressful sometimes when all they want is you. But it's just, there's no way to describe it. And I'm sure like everybody hears this all the time. Like, you can't understand what it is to be a parent until you are one. But it's true. Not necessarily just a biological parent, really just until you are the sole provider of a tiny, helpless little human being, or even not so helpless of an older child, until they look up to you like that, there's not really any experience that can replicate that. And it's humbling, and it's also the most joyful, hardest sacrifice you'll ever make. So I love that experience, and I wouldn't take back the sacrifices I've made for anything. And I would, if I had not had kids and instead written twice as many books at the end of my life, I would have been, sad and alone. And not to imply that not having kids is a terrible thing, because everyone has different situations in their life. But for me personally, I love people and I love my family. And I knew that even though at the time I wasn't really thrilled at the idea of cutting back my writing schedule, I knew that I didn't want to grow old and then look back and be like, well, dang, I wish I'd had kids. So that's definitely the best. And the worst, there's a couple things I could say, Les kind of mentioned just the stress and, just the toll it takes on you. But I'll also mention just the terrible responsibility of knowing that this person's upbringing and like their morals and their decision to be a good person, it's their choice, obviously, but you're shaping them as a human being who's going to grow up and do great or terrible things in the world, Like that's, I think about that every day, and it's kind of frightening, but also, good potential. So it's just, it's scary sometimes trying to make sure I try to do a good job and don't say something or build a habit unconsciously that's going to screw them up, or, and worrying about that they'll be okay day by day and they're not going to fall down and crack their head or like run out into the road. And so.
But, you're talking about shaping your kids. One of the things I concluded is the ship set sail when they were born. And the best my wife, Carol, and I can do is we were the tugboat that was in the harbor, kind of bumping the ship, trying to get it to go in the right direction. Because, you in college, you have all these classes, and they add, you take classes, and is it nature versus nurture, tabula rasa, how much of, what you are and your personality is inborn and genetic, and how much is shaped by your environment. It's obvious those people who wrote those books had no children.
Yeah.
Because my kids had a personality and they were individual people the moment they were born. And I don't know about you, Lydia, but you have 2 kids. I could see personality differences before I could possibly have had an effect within the first 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
And as a Christian, I shouldn't be surprised at that, because I believe we all have an immortal soul that is within us, right?
Yeah.
Now it doesn't mean an environment doesn't affect. That tugboat still needed to get the ship to go out of the harbor and into the ocean, as opposed to running aground on the sandbar. But that ship, man, it's going.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. They definitely have their own personality, and you just try and hope that you teach them the tools and the self-control and the wisdom to guide themselves fruitfully in life, as opposed to, like you said, crashing on the sandy shoals or into the reef or wherever else, sinking in the waves.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Oh, we have a viewer. Hi, Nick. Nick is watching on Facebook. So welcome to the panel. All right, my next question. Were you both done? Okay.
Yep.
All right. My next question. One of my favorite things about kids, even though I don't have any, I do love working with them, especially teenagers. I've loved working with teenagers. I used to work with a whole bunch of teens, and I was in teen services in my local library system. And one of the things I absolutely love them is how absolutely ridiculous they can be sometimes, and how absolutely hilarious. I know one of my favorite stories about one of my kids who came to the library is he came up and his face was looking all crazy and greasy, and it was like something had happened. And he came up and said, "Miss Heather, one of my friends hit me with a pizza again." And I had to stop and be like, first of all, one of your friends hit you with a pizza. Second of all, again, implying that it's happened more than once. And there was a crazy story behind it, which I don't actually remember now, but that all leads up to my question. What's the funniest thing your kids have done thus far?
Oh my goodness. Lydia, you better go first.
Well, fortunately for all of you, being a writer who obsessively keeps records, I have an entire document where I write down cute things that my son does. I haven't really got much for Elliot yet because he's not talking yet. And so, there's not really stuff that he's engaged in except just, like smacking things cutely and stuff like that. So let's see. Let me see if I can find a good one. He had this really funny. We're out on a walk. I wrote it down. I want to make sure I say it correctly, tell the story correctly. Oh, so we were in the car driving home from Florida. And, mommy and daddy tell him stories all the time. I'm a writer and daddy's a storyteller. And so, if we need to calm him down or entertain him or whatever, we tell him a random story. And so he got into the habit of telling stories. And so I do not know where all of this story came from. I know we did get a new mower last summer. So that's where the mower came from. Not sure where the volcanoes came from, except maybe like a Storybots episode about volcanoes. So he tells us a story with slight editing for clarity by Mom, but this is pretty complete. 2 volcanoes floated in the water and went into town, where they went shopping for a mower. Then they brought the mower home, which was a volcano home in the woods, which were over there in the sky. And the trees grew from the woods up in the sky, and then the volcanoes mowed the grass, which was in the sky. And they got some houses to build their house, and they landed in the sky after they finished their mower. The end.
Your kid's going to be a writer. There's no way with a brain like that.
Awesome. Well, there's honestly another one, and I don't. Oh, wait, here we go. Tale of the Hickey Nut. Oh boy. So we were by a park called Iroquois Park and walk frequently. So this is about 2 years old. So about 24 months old. He told this story. And so he's walking along like with a stick and like smacking random like leaves beside the path. And he picks up a half-chewed hickory nut from the walking path in the park. So it's fall and like the squirrels are like chewing all the nuts and leaving bits all over the road. And so he's like, holds it up. I'm like, this burn off. Burn in sky. Tree got it. All tree got it. Leaf got it. Pole got it. Everybody acorn. And that was the end. So it was hilarious.
Whatever.
I have a video of it actually, and it was pretty hilarious.
Whatever he meant, he was very passionate about it.
He was very passionate about it.
Oh.
He wanted to
Now, I have to
emphasize
tell
that
you,
everything got the nuts.
The perk of having older kids is my daughter just brought me a smoothie with fresh mint on top.
Nice.
So there are perks.
Well, if you teach them to be helpful.
Ah.
Now, the funny story I'll tell is of the one who brought me the smoothie. She was about 2, maybe 2.5. And I had to take one of those business trips I was telling you about. So I was tucking her in and giving her a kiss goodnight. And I had to get up bright and early the next day to catch an airplane. And she said, "Daddy, are you traveling tomorrow?" And I said, "Yes, Leslie." And she had this look on her face and she said, "Are you flying on an airplane?" And I said, "Yes, I'll be on an airplane." And she looked up. She said, "Way up there in the sky?" And I said, "Yes, I'll be on an airplane way in the sky." And then she got this really concerned look on her face. "You better hold on."
Oh my gosh, that's adorable.
So she thought I was going to fall off.
Oh my gosh. That's so sweet.
So
I
wrote down a lot of those, not in the detail that Lydia has done. I mean, Lydia's taken the story all the way there. I've just written down a few things. But yeah, my son always made me laugh. He has a very dry sense of humor. I don't know if I can recount any of his jokes, but even from a young age, he would make these dry, sarcastic comments, and it's always just very apropos. So, yeah.
I actually just used that word in my writing today in the book I'm working on. Apropos.
It's a great word. It really is.
I had to look it up to make sure I was using it correctly. So.
Well, that's one thing I will give a bit of advice. Unfortunately, HP, I have to drop off at 7:30 for another engagement.
Oh, no.
My publisher has lined me up for something, and I've got to do it when the publisher calls.
Have fun. Get a
that's
turkey list.
Go have fun.
Thing, I will,
Yes.
but I want to tell you one thing that's been great, and I'd encourage any of the listeners out there, and Lydia and HP, I know you and Jacob won't have trouble with this when you have kids. At an early age, get them to read. And every night we would take at least 32 minutes to an hour, and it would be called Dear Time. And it was drop everything and read. And in about 30 minutes, my kids are going to be in the other room with my wife, and I'm going to be in here, and they're going to be reading. Even today. Now, my son won't be in there. He's going to be in his own space. He's got kind of a little apartment we fixed up for him downstairs. But I guarantee you, it's Dear Time for him, because that's been something that we've been doing ever since they were real little. And they still do that today, and they love books, and they read real, honest to goodness, physical books. So anyway, that's my patronizing comment.
It's good to see you, Les.
It's good to see y'all. Bye-bye.
Yes, good to have you on, even if only for a short time. So have fun.
I'll be
Bye.
on
And thanks for coming.
All right. Bye-bye.
Nice. Bye. All right. Yeah, he makes a really good point about that. I recall that one of the essential reasons why I grew up to be a writer and, of course, a reader is because my parents, they made an effort to get me to read. My mom more so than my dad. My dad actually frequently said to me that one of the things he regretted growing up was that he was never made to read that often. Whereas my mom made the effort to, take us to the local library every week. And it was such a huge part of my young life. And I didn't even think about it while it was happening. But looking back, I realized that the simple proximity to books was a very transformative thing. So yeah, absolutely. Get your kids to read at a young age.
Well, since we're on the topic, I half an hour to an hour every night. That's asking a lot for a workaholic like me with small children. But what we do is I have two comments on that. First of all, we do one book every day before nap time and 3 books every day before bedtime. So every day, without fail, Wesley gets to be read at least 4 books by either mommy or daddy. I've been trying. Elliot's my younger 10-month-old, is less interested in books than Wesley was at his age, but I'm trying to, still build up the habit and work at him, even though he, smacks it away or tries to grab it and eat it and stuff like that. Wesley was pretty entertained from the beginning, even from I was reading to him from age 3 months. Elliot's been a little bit harder because when you have two, it's harder to get one of them like alone without being disturbed and get him into the story. But Wesley loves being read to and loves looking at stuff. And then the other thing I was going to say is about me growing up. My parents did not need to make us read. They, in fact, fought us to get us to stop reading because we wanted to read all the time. We didn't, like they'd have to make us put our books down to eat, to sleep, to do school, to do our chores. Like we'd bring books to the table, we'd bring books into the bathroom, we'd bring books with us to church, we'd bring books everywhere. Like we got in trouble so many times for reading instead of doing other stuff. In fact, funny story, when the fifth Harry Potter book came out, I believe I was 16 at the time, right about there, 16, I think. So I was homeschooled growing up. So, we were kind of in charge of our own schedule in the sense that like we would do the schoolwork written down in our lesson planner and stuff. But, there were certain things we were supposed to do throughout the day. Well, when that book came in, I snatched it and ran out to the barnyard and hid in the barn loft and read that book all day long. And my mom had no idea where I was, and I got in huge trouble when I finished the book and came home, but I did not care.
That's awesome.
So that was the fifth year. And it was also kind of awful though, because I'm like bawling by the end of it. Spoilers. Somebody dies. And so of course by the end I'm like bawling. And so I kind of trudge home, like clutching the book, like mom meets you at the door. It's like, will you read that? Like I've been worried out. Like, how can you do that? I'm like, Mom, he died. I got like, I don't know, grounded or something, or like some kind of privilege suspended, but yeah, it wasn't that big deal. Mom was kind of used to us sneaking off and reading by that point, and I think she'd given up.
And it was probably worth it anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because we were good kids. We all loved school. We loved our studies, and we all got it done. Not necessarily on the timetable that we were supposed to, but we got our school done. So
Mm-hmm. Do your kids have any favorite books as of yet? I mean, I know they're very young, but are there any books that they just really enjoy having read to them?
Well, I mean, Elliot doesn't really have anything yet. The book that he tolerates the best is one that has like you push the buttons and it makes animal noises. But that's just probably because it's more entertaining than most of the other ones. Wesley, well, he really loves our Bible story books, and I'm a little bit surprised by that. Not in like a bad way, and I'm a very pleased way. But you don't really think of Bible stories as being like the most entertaining, amazing. Like, oh man, of course this is going to be what your kid loves the best. But we've got one called the Jesus Storybook Bible that does a really good job of telling Bible stories in a way that is still biblically sound while also being in a way that makes sense to small children, like that reaches them at their level, which it's hard to do that sometimes. It's hard to both keep the true message of what it's supposed to mean along with being something that a kid can understand. And their artwork is really beautiful, and he's always asking to read that one. It's a great big book with like the gilded cover, because of course I have to have.
Oh, those are nice. I like those.
It's got like the little filigree, and it's got the big string in it to keep your place, and so like big pictures, and it's just a really pretty book.
Those just magical when you're a kid. Like there's just something really special about those big bound pretty books with their own bookmark in them.
Yep, absolutely. And then let's see here. I'm trying to think of a couple others, because we have hundreds of children's books on multiple shelves in his room, and they kind of live like in stacks all over the house. Well, he loves Pinkalicious, which I am not really a fan of, because I personally have something against the color pink. I've never liked it. It's my least favorite color in the entire world. And this series about a girl named Pinkalicious, she randomly says things like pink-tastic and pink awesome, and I'm like, oh, why did this have to be the series that you love the most? Yeah. So, nothing against the subject matter. They're great books, and she has all these adventures and teaches them about imagining and friendship and responsibility and all these great things. But so much pink.
He
loves it.
I love pink,
loves
but even
pink.
I can only take so much pink.
No, I can't. I can't do pink. I'm not purple. Love purple.
I love purple too. Granted, I love all colors. Like I was thinking about my favorite movies at one point and realized that most of my favorite movies aren't even that good. They're just really colorful. Like I have the aesthetic like interests of a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got some more people. Hi, Thomas. Thomas says hi, Lydia.
Oh, hey, is that Thomas Haupt? Haupt? Yep.
Yep, it is. So,
hey, Thomas. He actually just bought a signed set of my books. So we actually mailed that today, Thomas. So you should see that showing up in a couple days.
Awesome. So double welcome to you, Thomas. What was, Lydia, what was your favorite book as a kid?
That, not only as a kid, but as an adult, is an impossible question, and you are a horrible person for asking it. So I don't have a favorite book. I never had a favorite book. I loved many books. Many books were very special to me. There was never like that one book that I carried around everywhere with me and it would like got worn to pieces because I just kept reading it.
Yeah.
I read so many books. I definitely have a couple favorites that I go back to and reread every now and then from my childhood. But I read tons of books. I mean, we would max out every library card we had, and we had these giant totes that were like the library totes that we'd take with us and just get all the books at the library and audiobooks and, you know, back when it was still cassette tapes in the little baggies and stuff. So I don't really have, I can tell you a couple of favorite authors and series from when I was a teenager. I loved the Patricia C. Reed Talking with Dragons series.
Yes! Oh my gosh, I love that series.
I'm pretty sure we like a lot of the same books, Heather, like knowing our similarity and like writing and like wry humor and
both
snark
write
and
about
stuff.
Wizards and witches and talking animals. So
I mean, and exactly.
There's going to be a lot of similarity there.
Yep. I mean, Narnia was a big favorite from when I was young. Tamara Pierce and her Tortall books were big favorites of mine. Wild Magic was probably my favorite, though Protector of the Small is a close second. And there's these two random books that I read as a young teen that are still my favorite books of all time, and I have hardly met if anyone else has ever heard of them, and yet I love them. One is called 7 Daughters and 7 Sons, and I don't even know the name of the author, but it's based on an old Middle Eastern folktale, and it's just an amazing story, like in the style of old, like Arabian Nights storytelling. And it's just, you should write it down and look it up sometime. 7 Daughters and 7 Sons. It's pretty short. You could read it in like an hour. You could probably read it. And it's just one of those stories that even though it's a pretty simple storyline and it goes quickly, it's just so impactful and the end is so satisfying. You're like, let's just read that again, you know? And then the other one is one called Mara, Daughter of the Nile, which I had to read for school the year that we studied ancient Egypt. And it's about a young Egyptian woman during the time when I think it was like Tutmos II or something. His like older sister like took over when his dad died, but he was like, you know, the young pharaoh, and eventually he like took back power from her or whatever. And so the girl is like a spy in ancient Egypt, and is like paid to spy on like the rebels and spy on like this young prince, and, you know, by the evil queen. And, you know, of course she falls in love with one of the, you know, the rebels, and, you know, she switches sides and is playing this double game, and like all set in ancient Egypt, and it's great. Like it's just such a great young adult story. So those are some of my favorites from being a kid.
Nice. I think I like most of the same ones as you, but I will say one of the books that stuck with me that I loved as a kid, that I still love as an adult, is The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster, and which I recently started rereading just because he had passed away recently. And it's one of those books where you can enjoy it for its childish whimsy, but when you look at it as an adult, there's also some really clever, deep observations and structures and whatnot in it. And it's just, I love it to death.
Yeah.
But I remember books anyway, but that one is.
Yeah, I vaguely remember reading that book, but I honestly don't remember it well enough to say anything about it. I just remember that I did read it.
Oh. Well, you've read so many books that they all just smash together at some point anyway.
They do.
So.
They do.
All right. My next question, going back to the parenting topic, how did becoming a parent change your perspective on the world?
Well, even though I knew it intellectually, I became much more hardline opinionated on the fact that non-parents should never give parents advice. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
I'm a non-parent. I fully agree with that.
I'm sorry. You just have no idea. And other parents, honestly, shouldn't give unsolicited advice to other parents because you're not parenting a thing or a category of a thing. You're parenting a person, one individual person.
Exactly.
And whatever it is that worked for your one individual person might be super helpful, could be completely irrelevant. And so it's like, it's almost equivalent to telling someone else how they should live their lives is like equivalent to telling a parent how to parent their children, because you're telling that parent how to tell their kid to live their lives. So that's not to discourage someone who, honestly, with good intentions and humility in their heart is trying to help another person who's in a parenting situation, not at all. But like the trope of, non-parents giving parents advice. I knew the trope before I had kids, and then I became a parent and I'm like, yeah, don't do that. It's not helpful most of the time. / bordering on I want to punch you in the face right now type of.
Yeah. Well, I feel like parenting, I feel like becoming a parent is one of those changes in life that is so different from what happened before that people who aren't parents just don't have the context. Like there's no way that a person who hasn't raised kids can know what it's like to even remotely raise kids.
Well, and
it's just a lack of experience.
Yeah, and it's also for most parents, obviously there's a lot of different kinds of parents. There's adoptive parents, foster parents, parent-child relationships of all kinds. But just speaking about the average parent, the majority, it's also very different for women because the biological process of being pregnant and giving birth to a baby physically changes you in such drastic ways that it's hard to conceptualize because it literally changes your brain chemistry permanently. Yeah. And that's not, a bad thing. It's what enables the human species to survive as a species. But I can no longer watch things where children get hurt. It is physically and mentally agonizing to watch it. And I heard my sister tell me about it when she started having kids and how she couldn't watch stuff like movies and TV shows where kids got hurt anymore. And of course, before it was like, oh, that's awful. That poor thing. Like, oh, but now it's like, I have to turn it off and skip it because I just can't watch it because that evokes a physical response in me that gets adrenaline rushing and makes me look for someone to kill because I'm instantly wanting to like protect the life of my children. And that's a physical response that's, built into our very biology so that we as parents have the tools to protect our children. Because thank God, not usually these days, but 500 years ago, there's going to be a lot more situations protecting your kids from wild animals, from robbers, from like disaster situations. So it's not just a situational change where all of a sudden, oh man, you've got a kid you got to take care of. It's a mental, emotional, and physical change to your very biology and the way your brain works. And so it's, it's understandable that non-parents wouldn't really get it on a deep level, and that's okay. We need non-parents. Please, guys, we want your help. Don't everybody have kids because parents need people who are single and have no kids. If everybody had kids, we'd have no babysitters.
Yeah, we'd all be insane too.
Oh yeah,
or at least very tired.
Yeah, we'd all be insane. We'd all be insane. So there is single people with no kids are a valued and important member of society. But it's a real interesting change. And honestly, the biggest impact on me for my career is the brain fog. Like, and specifically for women and pregnancy, the hormones that are part of making a pregnancy, healthy and work, have a pretty serious toll on your cognitive abilities, your memory, your cognitive processing. And a lot of it does fade and go away after the birth and after you finish nursing and like those hormones, leave your body. But some of it's permanent. And there were times trying to get back into writing after my births when I just would be like, words, I don't, where are they? Like, I know the thing, I can visualize it, but the word is just not there. And so was a little bit scary in ways to be like, is this my life now? And now I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever, it's life. I forget things. I have a terrible memory now, but I've always been a good note keeper, so I mean that mitigates it. But yeah, I have to work harder now to get into writing. Not so much once I'm really into the flow, but it is harder now, I think, getting into writing. And of course, sleep deprivation plays a big role. Sleep deprivation negatively affects anybody's writing, and when you have little kids, it's worse because you especially as a mom who nurses, not a lot of sleep goes on. So.
Yeah. Oop. Steve
but
says it looks like you have
cute.
googly eyes.
I should. Yeah, I know the light.
The reflection.
There you go.
I'm not going to unsee the googly eyes now. I love it. I need you to be able to see.
Is there any way I could like share a couple pictures of my kids in like this chat thing or something?
Oh, yeah,
I don't know.
if you, there is.
I could like drag and drop. Just my kids are super cute, and it's hard to resist the impulse to share adorable pictures.
If you look on the bottom of your screen, there's a little about 4 buttons over from the left. There should be a little thingy that says share, like a little button. That says
I
share.
see that.
Do you see that on your screen?
That.
Yeah, I think
I do.
You should be able to share your screen or a video file. So if you if you pull the pictures up on your screen, you should be able to.
So basically, it's like screen sharing.
Yeah.
Screen sharing. You mean? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will work on that, and you can bring up your next question.
All right. My next question is, what advice would you give to new parents, or alternately, what's something you'd wish you'd known before having kids?
So one thing that, I mean, honestly, it's pretty personal, and I wouldn't have thought of sharing this until just now. Not personal in like a I don't want to tell you kind of way, just it's personal to me, and so it may be different for other people, but it's something that has helped me, is the phrase surrender to the sacrifice. And this is super boring and not funny and very serious, but if you're going to have kids, you better freaking be ready to sacrifice your life for your children. Like, I'm sorry if somebody doesn't like that, too bad. If you're in charge of a tiny, innocent, helpless human being's life, you better be ready to sacrifice for them. And if you're not, I don't think you should have kids. Like, I think you need to be prepared to sacrifice. And obviously there's hardly ever a situation where you have to literally die to save your child. Thank God. But like,
yeah.
Just imagine for a moment if every single child in the world had 2 parents who adored them and loved them and worked their butt off to make that child's life as good as it could possibly be, no matter what their situation was. But just imagine every single child in the entire world. Imagine how that would change our world. Just imagine. Like, obviously that's a utopia that's impossible. Like, I understand. Oh, yeah. Because human nature and the ills of the world, like that can't happen. But if you think about it, though, one of the biggest and most impactful positive changes you can make in the world is being a freaking fantastic parent to your child. And if all parents would do that.
Yeah, I remember on that note, one of the most heartbreaking things for me when I was teaching was the number of parents who were simply indifferent to the students I taught, or to their kids that I was teaching. And I mean, it's having a loving parent, or having a parent who cares, at the very least cares, makes an enormous difference in the way a person grows up. And you can tell the difference. You can tell in a classroom which kids have attentive parents and which ones don't. And it just bewildered me that some people would have kids and then not pay attention to them or not take care of them. And it was just, it blew my mind.
Well, I think, and I can't say this about any one particular person. And of course, my comments are generalizations. And so please don't, hear this, whoever you are, and be like, oh, well, she's accusing me of, whatever. This is just a generalization. But, human beings are selfish creatures. We have an instinctive drive to please ourselves. And that's something everybody has to fight against. And so it's worse when you have kids, because not only do you have to give up your time to take care of them, but it's hard. Like, it's not just like, oh, here's a block of my time. Like, here's a block of my time, and you don't appreciate it, and you're screaming, and you're not obeying me, and you're throwing food everywhere, and I have to clean your dirty clothes, and like, it is a sacrifice, and it's a joy. It's a tremendous, life-changing, soul-shattering joy too. But it's a sacrifice. And so that's the phrase I was saying, is surrender to the sacrifice. Like, I repeated that to myself over and over again, mostly with my first, because by the second, like, I was a little bit more used to and more accepting of the sacrifice that it took. Like, I was expecting it. And so it wasn't as much of a shock. But like, there were times up in the middle of the night nursing my infant son, my first one, when I was just in tears because I was exhausted and tired, and I wanted to go to bed, and I didn't want to feed this baby, and he wouldn't go back to bed, and he kept crying, and I was just exhausted, and I just had to just surrender the sacrifice. It's not forever. This is for a good cause. Like, you are this child's entire world, and you owe it to them to put on your big girl panties and do it right for a couple years until they're a little bit more self-sufficient. Like, get over yourself and sacrifice. Get over yourself and sacrifice. And I think if a lot more parents realized that's what it took, they may be a little bit more careful about getting pregnant and having kids, or getting someone else pregnant, not to put it on women at all, getting someone else pregnant and having kids. So that's serious, and that's heavy, and that's not a really fun topic, but it's the truth, and it's what our world needs to hear. So yeah, it's a very relevant topic. Yeah. So anyway, you asked, there you go. Surrender to the sacrifice and be willing to do that. And also enjoy your kids, because they are amazing and fun and hilarious and cute, and they remind you of just the joys of being alive. Like, kids are so crazy adorable and fun sometimes. It's amazing. I love every day. Every day I wake up and it's something new with my kids.
That's the thing that I love about kids, like, of all ages. They're just so spontaneous, and you can never predict what they're going to do or say. And sometimes that's terrifying. But I remember I was watching, occasionally my husband's mom will come down to where we are to help take care of his brother's kids. Like, if they have to go out for like a wedding or something, it's just, they're gone for a weekend, and it's me and his mom helping to take care of their kids. And it fascinates me how observant they can be. For example, his brother's oldest daughter, I think she's 9 at this point. There was a period where she was really fascinated with Doc McStuffins, and she wanted to be a doctor, and she had like all these little like body books and whatnot. And she learned that I had gotten out of surgery about a month before that. I had like a collapsed lung or something, and she wanted to know about it. And so first I gave her the clean version, but then she was like, no, I want more. Tell me all the nasty details. So I told her all the nasty details of having this tube inside my chest so it could help me clear the air that was leaking out of my lungs and whatnot. And so I tell her the story, and she thinks it's cool, and I don't really like think any more about it until she calls me over into the next room. And my nephew is also helping us that weekend, and she's playing with him. She's performing surgery on him, and she's taken everything that I've said, and like, she's taken apart toys to be able to make the equipment that I described. And she's basically emulating this lung surgery on him, and she ended up making up a disease that he had, and his main symptom was that he had no friends. Which I don't know how she tied that to the lung, but it was just amazing to see her brain take that story and develop it and apply it like that. It blew my mind. It also made me really glad that I didn't tell her about my eye surgery because there was a period where I had my retina partially detached, and they had to like basically laser my retina back to the back of my eye. And I'm like, I'm so glad I did not tell her that, and she get control of a laser and put that in his eyes. I'm just, it made me a lot more cautious about the kind of stories I tell kids.
Oh yeah, you got to be careful.
It also
when
is
you
just fascinating.
Kids.
Oh yeah,
they are sponges. They are sponges.
Oh, yeah.
They pick up on everything.
Yes. All right.
They're sharp little tacks.
Let's see. I have other questions, but I got to see which ones, because I had some of my questions were like, do your kids read your books? Do your kids write?
No.
And we actually have a question over in the comments. It says, this is from Rail Hermit on Twitch. And it says, Lydia, would you consider writing a book for small children? What would be important for you to include in a small children's book that you haven't seen or wish to see? That's a good question.
So I've toyed with the idea of writing children's books, and I have mainly not taken the idea seriously, primarily because it is not my strength. There are many things that I could do. I know I'm a determined, intelligent person who is good at studying things and learning new things. And I'm sure I could do a decent job of writing a decent children's book. But because it's not my strength, and it's also not where my career lies, where I make income to feed my family, I have not seriously considered writing a children's book. Now, it doesn't mean someday I won't be hit by some great inspiration, maybe do it as a passion project. But if I were to write a children's book, I would most certainly do something involving animals and or nature, because I think that a lot of children, as young children, are not taught to appreciate and have wonder at the beauty of our earth and value it. And I think a lot of the problems we have with like our economy, like a capitalistic society or a society with a free capitalistic system, can be abused by those with power who want to exploit the world around us. And yet, if those people in power were people who had grown up as small children, being taught by their parents to love and adore the nature around them, and to, internalize the idea that we are the precious stewards of our earth, and it's up to us to take care of it. Like, just imagine what difference that would have made, in what goes on. And so I think stories that help teach kids the beauty and the value and the preciousness of the animals and the plants around them, and give them a fascination with them that they can connect to. I think like that's a very meaningful topic for me, because I love nature and everything. And I teach my son, my older son, all about the bugs. We'll be like, Mommy, what kind of bug is that? And we'll talk about that it's a fly, and it's, it's not harmful. You don't need to be scared of it. If you see it, just say hello. This is what it eats and stuff like that. And then, he sees a bee, like, okay, that's one that we don't touch, but it's not going to hurt you if, you just don't touch it. You can enjoy it. It pollinates flowers, or man, that's a wasp. If you see a wasp, come run and get Mommy, like not, oh, be afraid of that, run screaming. Cause that's how you teach kids to like be afraid of spiders and think of spiders as terrible creatures when they're not. They're incredibly important for the ecology of the planet, and you shouldn't go around squashing them just cause you're afraid of them. Sorry, guys who hate spiders, please don't squash them. Just get like a little book or a cup or something and shoo them outside so they can do their job. Actually, spiders in your house are generally very good because they catch and kill and eat pest animals. But anyway, not to digress. So like, to me, that's really important, teaching them the kinds of flowers and, that, oh, we don't want to tear up flowers just because it's fun. Like, they're important and they help like the plant make seeds and everything. So, just teaching little kids to be responsible. And I grew up on a farm. Like, I'm from a farming family. And so like stewardship of the earth is something that I, has always been very important to me. And so I definitely do something with animals in it, and something with a lot of imagination. There's a beautiful book called Miss Maple's Seeds, I think. It's about like a little a little like old granny fairy person who flies around with her birds with like little saddles on them and collects up the baby seeds that were lost in like this seeds planting, like in this spring. And she takes them home and she teaches them all about being a plant and all like how to grow and how to soak up, you know, the sun and the water, and like gets them all ready and then like sends them off with love the next spring and like sends them off to be planted by her bird helpers. And so it kind of teaches you a mix of like incredible imagination along with like love for, you know, nature. So that kind of mix is something that would be, and it also has beautiful illustrations. I love artwork. So I'd love like just beautiful artwork. So, and I do something with cats. Sorry, wrong side. There we go.
Yes.
Cats. Definitely something with cats. The kid would be like riding the cats into battle or something, you know, with a sword, fighting off the shadow monsters on their cat steeds or something. So
I am all for battle cats. Yeah, I think I know the question wasn't directed at me, but I'm the moderator, so I'll answer anyway. I think I've also considered writing for small children. And I really liked the point that you made about books about imagination. The one concept that I've had that I really want to write about actually derives from the fact that when I was a kid, cardboard boxes were magical things, and cardboard boxes are magical things to me now. Like, there was nothing more exciting when I was a kid than the refrigerator breaking, because it meant we would get
refrigerator box.
We'd get the refrigerator box, and I would, every time we got a new box in my house, I would be all clever with it. I would sneak my mom's X-Acto knife out of her craft kit and start shaping the box and using little push pins to make little buttons and whatnot. And cardboard boxes were just this amazing sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of way for me to channel my imagination. And so I've always wanted to write a book about a kid who is actually able to use these cardboard boxes to go to magical alternate universes and whatnot.
But that'd be so cool.
Oh yeah, I think it would be too.
Cool.
But the challenge with writing children's books for me is that when you move from age to age, there is a huge difference in the kind of writing that children can understand.
Yeah. And
because a book that's written for, say, like a 1 to 2 year old is going to be very different than a book that's written for a 4 and 5 year old. And of course, as they get older, they can read more complex books. But if you look at just go to a library and look at the books that are recommended for each grade,
yeah,
there's a tremendous difference in the comprehension level. And so for me, the problem would be,
I will say, parents, you don't have to pay attention to recommended reading levels. They can be helpful, but I do not pay attention to recommended reading levels at all. I'm like, if my kid looks interested in that book, let's read that book. You know, obviously appropriate wise, but you know, at 2.5, it's not like I'm reading him books for 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I tell him about The Hobbit all the time, and I'm like, you know, buddy, like, as soon as I feel like you're not going to get super bored when I'm reading it, we'll go ahead and read The Hobbit. Probably 4.5 is when I'll read The Hobbit to him. 4.5, 5 years old. That's about when my mom read it to us, and I was about 5 or 6. You know, as long as you give them an activity to do on the floor and they've got something to do with their hands, you know, and you already have been reading to them for their whole childhood, like, that's not generally a book that you'd think of for like a 4 or 5 year old. But I mean, if they're already used to reading, you know, by that time, they're just craving those bigger, deeper stories. So.
But yeah, the standard that I used when teaching, actually, because I taught in a classroom that had a wide variety of reading levels in it. Like, even though it was an 8th grade classroom, I had some students who were on a 3rd grade level, and I had some students who were on a college level. It was enormous. But the rule that I used was, I basically told my students to look at a book, and if they understood X number of words, it was too easy for them. If they had trouble with X number of words, it was probably a little ambitious for them. If they understood Y number of words, it was probably perfect for their level. Because with books, with students who are learning to read, or not necessarily learning to read, but students who are still developing their reading skill, you want them to be comfortable, but you also want them to be at least a little bit challenged. And then when they overcome that challenge, they move to the next level. And so I didn't really use age recommendations that much either. But to tie back to my initial point about writing, is that when I'm writing, I feel like I have to pick an age range that I'm going to aim for, so I can determine the style and level of vocabulary I'm going to write in. And these days, I don't have all that much experience with children's books, and so I'd have to read a lot more children's literature to try to figure out what level I would read my cardboard box book at. And there's also the issue of at what age are kids still interested interested in playing in cardboard boxes? At what age do kids suddenly decide, oh, I'm too old for cardboard boxes, I'm not going to read a book about cardboard boxes? That kind of thing. There's a lot that goes into children's fiction that you simply don't have to think about when you write for older readers, which makes it fascinating literature. I love children's literature. But there's also, it's a complex thing. We have another question, and I think we covered it a little bit earlier before Rail Hermit joined, but it's how important do you feel it is for parents to read to their children? And we can revisit that. So yeah, Lydia, how important is it?
It is as important as teaching them. Pretty much, it's as important as teaching them that other human beings have value and they shouldn't kill people. If that sounds serious, then I'm glad you're picking up on that. There are many studies that show that a child's welfare in life, and I'm meaning like a holistic sense, not welfare necessarily like money, but that's a part of it, is pretty convincingly, not the right word I'm looking for, it's tied very closely to how much time their parents took to read to them as children. Mm-hmm. Like the reason, and I'm going to get into a little bit of social justice here in terms of communities of generally upper class, which not always, but oftentimes are white people, upper class people who have time to read to their kids versus lower class people who are struggling more, don't have this money, which I don't want to say often because I don't think that's correct, but more so is people of minorities and people of color might be working 2-3 jobs and they don't have time to sit with their kids and read them books and instill that in their children. That time that parents spend to sit and teach their children to love literature, to learn by teaching themselves, to learn through reading and expanding their horizons and learning about other peoples and other places and the value of a diversity of ideas, like that changes their entire life. Mm-hmm. Like their entire life. And that's not to say at all that a kid who didn't grow up enjoying reading is like doomed or like a lesser, like not as intelligent, like nothing like that. But the advantage in life that people can have just from being taught to love reading and their parents taking the time to read to them as kids, like it is incredible, like scientifically proven to make a pretty significant difference in grade level, in the jobs that they can get, and in their socioeconomic level, and their like mental and emotional well-being, in their health, like in so many things. So yeah, reading is vital. And even if you personally don't like to read and you don't want to sit down and read with your kid, like at the very least, take them to the library, once a week for the kids' reading time, or, let your mom or, your sibling who's their aunt or uncle, whatever, like come read to them, or, just whatever you can do to get them reading. And maybe when they're older, maybe, you've got older kids and they're not really fans of reading, take their freaking video games and phones away and make them read books. Like, it is healthy reading books. Mm-hmm. It is unhealthy to be on computers and video games when your mind is still developing. That's scientific fact. That's not an opinion. That's scientific fact.
I'll actually add here is it's important to make them read print books as well, because there's been research that has suggested that people interpret they interact with print books differently than they interact with digital reading. People are more inclined to skim digital reading, whereas if they're holding a book in their hand, they're more likely to engage with it and more likely to pay attention to it. And I find that, like, I'm a skilled reader, but I find that in my own reading, I will pay less attention to an ebook than I will a print version of the same book. Yeah. And I think it's really important to make that distinction, especially for emerging readers.
Well, and often kids prefer paper books.
Yes, I love that too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think it's instinctive, and it's something we should learn from. We, not that it's not good to make digital sources available to them, because you can have a lot of access to a lot more things, especially in high school. Digital libraries and digital resources. But yeah, especially as young children. Oh my gosh, I saw this product when I was pregnant being marketed to me that was basically a tablet for infants, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
What was it? Your sound went out.
Tablet for infants. A
Ah.
infant like cradle chair with a frame to put a tablet. So as your infant is laying back in the chair, helpless, unable to move or get away from it, there's a tablet right there, like showing that, like playing stuff and like,
Mhm.
and they're all like, oh, it'll educate them and baby Einstein. And I'm like, you're forcing your infant to look at a screen.
Mhm.
It's like, so here I am, a parent telling other parents what to do. By the way, I'm breaking my own rule, but I am a parent, so I have at least a little bit of,
You got
little
more
bit
than
of
me,
cred.
so.
But anyway, when scientific studies tell you that it's detrimental, bordering on damaging to children, like I asked my pediatrician straight up, how long should I wait until I let my kids watch TV? She's like, at least 3. Do not put them in front of a screen until they're 3. And of course, that's nearly impossible in this day and age.
Yeah.
And there are situations when it can absolutely be helpful. I'd say my 2.5-year-old maybe has maybe 2 hours a week of screen time, something like that. Less if it's sunny outside. If it's summertime, he's outside almost all the time. But in the winter, he's got more. But so it's nearly impossible to keep them away from it entirely. But we try not to show them stuff on our phones. Like even if it's a fun, entertaining movie, maybe they'll enjoy it. Well, it doesn't matter. You're teaching them to gain stimulus dopamine from a screen, and that's starting an addiction cycle that is
Exactly,
in my personal opinion, bordering on abusive to addict your small children to screens. And a lot of parents have no idea that they're doing it, which is what's tragic. So personal opinion, backed up by science.
Well, even on a practical level, just thinking of, and obviously I'm not a parent, but thinking of my own experience being a kid and reflecting on it, I actually am enormously grateful that I grew up in the era right before social media.
Me
because
too.
I think about how I interact with social media, like how it's just a casual thing I look at, and it occurs to me that if I had grown up 10 years later, I would be less creative than I am now, because there's a certain merit to being bored and having to learn how to entertain yourself.
Yeah.
And I write novels now because my parents basically let me be bored and learn how to entertain myself. Like instead of having a phone to look at whenever they went through Home Depot, I'd look at all the tools and be like, oh, that looks like a sci-fi weapon. Let's make up a story to go with that.
Yeah.
And it's a small thing, but in retrospect, it had an enormous impact on how I developed. And of course, we couldn't have anticipated it because it was 10 years before Facebook. But it's something that I think about quite a bit. When I think about if I'm going to have kids, like how much technology am I going to expose them to, and at what age, and what kids on social media is like a whole other topic for a whole other thing.
Well, ask pretty much any pediatrician and they'll tell you shouldn't let your kids have social media, be on social media at all. Most people I've spoken to say minimum 16 years old. If you can hold off till 18, that's even better. But it's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do, especially with corporations spending billions of dollars marketing to young people, trying to get them on those devices. So, that's a topic of, what activism can you be involved in to advocate for laws being passed to prevent companies, like marketing X, Y, and Z to young people. But that's an entirely different topic. And I do want to say one more thing, because I know we might have viewers watching who, like I said, might be in that situation where they're working 3 jobs and they may feel like they have absolutely no choice but to, let the TV babysit their kids or whatever. Like I understand that feeling, especially before I was making enough money that I could afford to pay a babysitter to watch my kids so I could work more. That, sometimes you can't do anything unless you sit your kid in front of a screen and occupy them. And that's true. And that's where the whole surrender to the sacrifice thing comes back in. Before there were screens, parents have been raising kids for a long, long time. But all those years, parents weren't doing as much. They didn't have as much of their own life. Especially mothers, almost many of them did not have careers, were not creating things. Like all they did was be a mom to their kids. Or like I said, like lower socioeconomic strata, the mom was, working outside the home, and, maybe the aunt had the kids or the grandma had the kids or whatever. So, I don't want to be unsympathetic to someone who feels like their only choice is to hand their child a phone, or, they're exhausted and their mind they just can't take another moment more. And instead of yelling at their kid, they hand them their phone, to give themselves a little peace. That's a hard situation. Being a parent is hard, but I would encourage anybody, in as much as you can, to find other solutions than handing screens to children, just because of the long-term damage of, I don't even want to say heavy use, because it can happen pretty quickly. But unmonitored and unmindful use of screens with children. Let's put it that way. Unmindful use. So, yep, I'll get off my soapbox now. You asked, so there it is. Again, I'm a parent, so I have a little bit of cred. Take it or leave it as it is useful to you.
All right,
backed by science.
All right, we're a little bit over time, but actually, I have two more questions if you don't mind. I know.
Yeah, sure. We can go. We can go like another 5 minutes. I'm just you're just taking up my writing time, writing my next novel. So my fans can, they might pick a bone with you, but other than that.
Yeah. Okay. First question is the quick one. What's a piece of advice you wish you could have given yourself as a kid?
Oh gosh.
Or is that a complicated one?
Well, let me think for a second. Let me think how to say this. It's another pretty individual answer that might not resonate with other people, because I'm an individual person who had my own problems. So I'm trying to think of a way to make it a little bit more universal.
I can give mine while you think, if you want.
Yeah, go for it. All
right. Well, mine, and it actually took me some time to come up with this one when I wrote the question initially, but mine would initially be to try to relate to people. And to put this in context, I was the sort of kid who was very much the overachiever, very proud of being academic, very proud of being a geek. And as a result, I kind of acted like that really sort of pretentious, arrogant person, and it didn't really occur to me that was how I was acting at the time, but it kind of it gave me some distance from people and made me it made me in my own head devalue the opinions and experiences of other people. And for that reason, I just lost my train of thought, as happens sometimes. To back up, I think it's very important that a person not condescend to the experiences of another person, especially given the sort of political climate we live in now.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to listen to the experiences of other people and to take them into consideration. And that's just not something I really did as a kid. And it's mostly just because I was just being an arrogant little nerd. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But it's very important to be able to relate to people and to try to relate to people and to understand that your experience is not the experience. There are other experiences out there. And so yeah, my kid self would just be like, whatever. But my adult self says, hey, listen to this.
Yeah. Well, and so honestly, I had somewhat of the same experience. I don't think I took away from it at the time of that other people's experiences weren't valid, more just that I was very opinionated and I put the most weight on my own opinion because it was mine, but the way that affected me most since I was homeschooled, and because I'm an extremely independent person who does not like being told what to do, and I don't really like working with other people. I prefer to do my own thing at my own time in my own way. I'm very particular in that way. You might even say eccentric. Because of that, I have struggled my entire life to make friendships, like meaningful, deep friendships, not just be friendly with people, because obviously I'm an extrovert. I'm good at being friendly with people. But I have a great lack in my life of deep, meaningful, long-term friendships, because those kinds of friendships take time and effort and sacrifice, just like raising kids and being married do. And as a kid, you don't really think about that as a kid. Like, friendships just kind of come and go. But because I was so focused on doing my own thing, I think I didn't realize, like, I felt very lonely and very unwanted by everybody but my immediate family. And I didn't understand why. And that really hurt me in a lot of ways. Like, it's given me insecurities as an adult that I have to work pretty hard to get over. Like, there'll be times when, even though I'm an extrovert, I don't want to go do something and be around other people, not because I don't want to be around other people, but because I assume that they don't want me around, because I assume nobody wants me around. And my husband has to constantly be like, you don't understand. Like, people love hanging out with you. I'm like, no, they don't. Why would anyone want to hang out with me?
Because you're cool.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. I appreciate you saying that. But I mean, like, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You've got the voice in your head that's not logical. It just is the way that your brain chemistry has formed for whatever reason. And you have to talk to yourself and choose to make decisions, not based on what you feel, but based on what you know to be the truth, or you expect to be the truth, or whatever. So, you know, I tell my younger self, you are not the center of the universe. And the effort you put now into other people will reward you 1,000-fold later in life. Like, sincerely put into other people, sacrificially and selflessly put into other people. And like, I did that to an extent with my family. I have great, amazing relationships with my immediate family. Love my siblings to death. Love my parents to death. You know, love my grandparents. We've all been very close and very supportive. But outside that, I mean, basically, my husband's my best friend, and that's it. So, and it's sad. Like, it's sad. I have surface friendships with hundreds of people, and I love people, but it's just so hard. It's just so hard. It takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of work to make those deep friendships. And I just didn't know that's what it took. And I didn't care as a kid. And so I went around lonely and feeling all sorry for myself, because I'm like, nobody likes me, you know? So yeah. I'd also tell my younger self that adults really do know what they're talking about. You know, like, kids just have no idea. It's kind of with the whole parenting thing. Like, I totally thought I was an adult when I turned 13. Oh man, I was totally an adult. Like, I'm so grown up. I'm 13 now, y'all. Like, I'm an adult.
There are so many times when I've gone up to my mom and been really sheepish about it and been like, Mom,
I'm sorry.
You were right.
I'm sorry. I'm
maybe
sorry.
It took me 20 years to realize it. But
I know. It's the paradox of humanity that children have the energy and like the open-minded wonder to achieve great things, but none of the wisdom or the discipline to do it. And old people have like the wisdom and the experience to do it, but none of like the energy or drive. Yeah. It's the paradox of the human condition. So anyway, teaching your children to respect authority, not in a mindless fashion, but in a genuine acknowledging the lived experience of older people. You don't have to agree with every adult, but I think respecting authority and respecting your elders is one of the most vital, like, moral traits that you can teach your children. And we were pretty good kids. Like, I respected adults, but I definitely thought that I knew better than them. Like, definitely thought that. So
yeah. Oh, I was exactly the same way as a kid. All right, final question.
That was not a short question. Not a short question.
I always think some questions are going to be short and then they end up not. Here's one I know might potentially be long. And it is, what is the number one thing you want your kids to learn from you?
We chatted briefly about this, Heather. And so I'll try to be a little bit brief, because I could get really deep into this, but it's an answer that I think a lot of people will resonate with. A lot of people. I'm a Christian, as Les Johnson mentioned, he's a Christian too. And, I've thought really hard and long about, teaching my Christian beliefs to my children. And the whole argument of, oh, don't teach your religion to your children. It's not fair to them. Let them grow up and choose their own religion. It should be their choice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as someone who spent my entire life studying religion, I have a lot of experience, mostly in my own religion, but in other religions too, also in philosophy and other things. And it is a truth of reality that everybody has a God, period. That God might be yourself. It might be science. It might be, whatever. But whatever you put your sights on, whatever you set your heart toward, is your God. And I'm using God with a little g, and I'm using it in a little bit more amorphous term, than like Christianity would see it as. I'm not talking about the Christian God, Yahweh. I'm talking about God little g. It is human nature that you center on and worship something. Could be your job, could be your spouse, could be your kids, could be your career, or whatever it is. Everybody has a job, and your kids, has a God. Not everybody has a job, unfortunately. Your kids will have a God. And so your choice is not either let them, grow up with a big view of everything and then pick and choose what their religion is going to be. Your choice is either teach them your own morals or allow them to grow up being taught the morals of the world around them, which could maybe be good, but probably is going to be very bad.
Or at the very least, inconsistent.
Extremely inconsistent and confusing. Most people, I think, would agree that if left to their own, this is a fact. Children are not born good. Like, they're not innocent little angels. Children are little animals. They're animals.
Oh, yeah.
And it's okay. Like, babies are animals. It's okay. They have no idea. You have to teach them how to be respectful, upstanding citizens and moral people who care about the lives of others. You have to teach that. That's not ingrained into human nature. And if you don't teach it to them, then they won't learn it. And so, yes, I'm teaching my son to be oh God. See, this is the having
it's
kids
almost 10
thing.
o'clock.
Yeah, it's almost 10 o'clock. I'm teaching my sons to be Christians. I am teaching them that God loves them and that he died for them so that they could choose, if they want, in the future, to accept him into their hearts as their Lord and Savior and be a part of his family. That is their choice. But I will teach them about God and that he created them and loves them, and that this is a hard, hard world, but that he has sacrificed his own life to make it better, and that one day it will be better, and that they have hope, and that they have a future, and that they have an ultimate eternal purpose that is meaningful and requires responsibility and hard work and sacrifice. And those are morals that, regardless of what your religious belief is, makes upstanding human beings who will take care of the world and take care of each other. I'm obviously, any belief system can be abused. Any belief system, no matter what it is. Humankind will find a way to abuse it.
Oh yeah.
So, we don't need to go on about how, this religion or that religion has these fanatic wackos and they do terrible things. Well, of course, because humankind does terrible things.
Human nature.
That's just human nature, So, and I know some people who were horribly abused by their parents and by people who claim to be Christians. And my heart weeps for those people, like weeps and bleeds for those people, because I know the peace and joy that God gives me that has literally saved my life multiple times in the past. I probably would have committed suicide at various points throughout my younger years if I hadn't been a Christian, just because I'm a very emotional person and I'm easily overwhelmed by emotion. My older brother died when I was 16. So, that was a hugely traumatic point in my life. And, I have my whole road, like my whole story. But like, I'm not like a backseat Christian. Like, I live this in the trenches, and there's no way I'm going to pass up, or fail to instill that joy and that hope, and that morality of the value of human life into my children. I think it would be a horrible detriment isn't the right word. Like, I would be bad to not do that. And then if later my sons grow up and decide that they don't believe in God and they don't want to be Christians, I'm going to love them just the same. I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to love them just the same. And as long as they, are, care for people and aren't going around like, oh man, I want to be, I don't know, like an anarchist and burn down buildings and shoot people because I don't like the law, like whatever, as long as they're not like breaking the law and hurting people, like I will absolutely respect their belief and their choice to believe anything, because it has to be a choice. So the thing I want my kids to learn from me is that God loves them and he died for them and he wants them to be a part of his family if they want to choose that. So take from that what you will. And, maybe now you can go home and chew over the idea of, what moral system you should teach your kids. Because I love that you picked like parenting, Heather, because you probably thought it would be like a pretty lighthearted, like fun topic with lots of stories of cute little kids.
Oh, I know parenting can be, it can be deep
so it's
traumatic.
I mean, because it's, Yep. In fact, the book I'm writing right now, but Lily Singer, book 7, it's Love, Lies, and Hocus Pocus, Kindred. So when I started out this series, it was just with a little spark of an idea and like a general like arc. I had no idea whatsoever what I was getting myself into, none at all, because we have combined my expertise in writing, which is characters and people and character growth, which you've seen a little bit. I think you read my first book.
Yeah.
And
the others are on the pile.
Yeah. And a 12 book series. And I'm in book 7 and I'm like consulting child psychologist and behavioral therapist and like getting stories from trauma victims and, like all these nitty gritty details of human nature and I'm sorry, I'm holding up my computer because it's hot and it's making my legs hot. So my camera's a little shaky, but like all these details of how people actually grow in life and putting that into my stories. And it's a like slog not in a I don't enjoy it kind of way, but in a like it is deep and gritty and like this book is like 3 times longer than my last book, which is already twice as long as the book before. Well, no, I've already decided that for this book, I have beta readers for every book. But I'm going to have a couple alpha readers. Usually my husband is just my alpha reader. I'm going to have to pick out like 3, maybe 4 super awesome special alpha readers to read this book before I really do much editing at all and tell me, do I need to cut anything? If so, what it is? And third, how? Because like this book is so long already and I'm not even halfway done. And I can't think of anything it's all just integral to the life and the development of these people. And it's like real life. Like people have told me that one of their favorite things about my books is the characters and how they grow. And I'm not doing this on purpose. I'm just writing people living lives.
You write characters the exact same way I do. And sometimes they drive me insane for that exact same reason.
Man, y'all, I've dug myself into a deep, deep pit that I love. Like, it's a great, wondrous world down here, but it's a deep, deep pit. And I don't know what's going to happen. Like, if I'm going to have to split this into 2 books, I don't want to because I've already plotted out the entire 12-book series and it would mess up all my plotting. Or if, like, the next book is actually going to be back to the normal book length and it's just going to be this one's crazy long, or I don't know. It's all a surprise. I'm a heavy plotter.
It'll be awesome either way.
Well, at this point, I have no idea what's going to happen. Like, usually I know, but this time I have no idea. No idea what's going to happen. So
it'll be an adventure. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank
you for having me.
This has been a bit of a rocky panel, considering that we were supposed to start out with 3 other people, and we've slowly been losing people. but thank you for sticking out with me. And you've been on this show a million times before, so people know you. But again, if you want to, just say who you are, where people can find your books, what you've got coming out, etc.
I am Lydia Sherrer. I write snarky magical fiction with a talking cat. You will love it. It's not a question. You will. So just go get it and read it. Like, you'll love it. It'll be amazing. You can find my books on any book retail platform out there, audiobook, ebook, paperback, as well as on my own website. I have my own store and run frequent sales. And I, sell signed books and stuff like that. And I've got some merchandise. I also have a Patreon account, which has been exploding, which is nice because Facebook randomly shuts me off for no reason. It won't tell me why. And my income instantly, third time in a month. And my income magically disappears overnight because Facebook's like, oh man, random algorithm burp. Oops, your account's disabled.
You said you had a Patreon account? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good.
A Patreon account.
The sound has been flickering in and out this evening for some reason. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone heard the
Patreon.
Stuff.
Anyway, Patreon, where I write a new short story every month and post like snarky cat quips and like backstory from my stories. So that's a really fun place to go if you've read my books and enjoy my books and want to dig deeper into the world. So
nice. All right. Well, thank you again. Oh,
I'm actually wearing one of my merchandise shirts. I don't know if you can see this. Is it backwards?
It says, "I'm in my happy place." Yes, I can see it.
And then at the bottom it says,
"Oh, your picture froze up. Don't ruin it by opening your mouth." I love it.
So anyway, that's one of my merchandise shirts. So
nice.
Yeah.
So everyone go buy her stuff and read her books and everything. And all right. Well, thank you again for joining me tonight. And thanks to everyone who watched, and again, everyone who will watch the archives. So goodbye, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Have a good evening.